which may be the most important part of the job in the long term. Making friends and being friendly with your coworkers is a detriment to having a good work environment, and this anime kinda shows what it's like. Now, does this anime represent a job environment accurately, and is the subject matter treated accurately? Well, let's find out in this review of New Game. Since childhood, Aoba Suzukaze has loved the Fairy Story game series, particularly the character designs. So, when she graduates from high school, it is no surprise that she applies to work at Inklejump, the company responsible for making her favorite video game. On her first day, she is excited to learn that she will be working on a new installment to the series, Fairy Story 3, and even more so under Ko Yagami, the lead character designer. In their department are people who share the same passion for games. There is Yun Ijima, whose specialty is designing monsters, the shy Hifumi Takimoto, who prefers to communicate through instant messaging, Hajime Shinoda, an animation team member with an impressive figurine collection, and Rin Toyama, the orderly art director, Shizuku Hazuki, the game director who brings her cat to work, and Umiko Ahagun, the short-tempered head programmer. New Game follows Aoba and the others on their adventure through the ups and downs of game making. For making the perfect character design to fixing all the errors that will inevitably accumulate in the process. New Game is from the studio that brought you such anime like Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, Himoto Umaru-chan, Yuru Yuri, and Gabriel Dropout. The studio is called, of course, Doga Kobo, and I don't know if that's actually how you pronounce it, but anyways, before New Game and Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, I had never heard of them before, but they pretty much make slice-of-life moe anime, and in many ways, they're a discount Kyoto animation from the late 2000s. And by no means is this a bad thing, as their anime for the most part are what I'd consider the best kinds of moe slice of life. As for this anime, it originally aired during the summer 2016 season of anime with 12 episodes and a standard runtime of 24 minutes. It is directed by Yoshiyuki Fujiwara, who you may know for anime like Plastic Memories, Engaged to the Unidentified, and GJ Club. His directing style is pretty straightforward, and his best work as director is probably Moe Slice of Life, but he's also worked on anime like Attack on Titan for Key Animation, and even worked on one of my favorite anime, Planetes, for In-Between Animation.
It's still hard to believe, but I work for a game company!
The one thing I don't like about New Game, though, was how unrealistic the show's premise was treated. If you've read about anything about game development, not even in Japan, you will know it's a very hard job that requires tremendous sacrifice. I've heard stories of people completely leaving the industry because the work required was literally killing them and shortening their lifespan, or even worse, ruining their relationships with their spouse and kids. Japan, believe it or not, is much more extreme in this way. They demand even more sacrifice, so much so that it has driven people to suicide. New Game handles this industry in the safest of ways, of course. You don't see the grueling work hours, and I'm already seeing the argument pop up with Ko sleeping at the office, as well as the part in the series that involves crunch time. Yes, they do cover this, but the way they cover it is an example of the problem that I have with this show. The show almost tries to sugarcoat the work environment of a Japanese game developer. Trust me when I say that working for a Japanese game developer is not a fun job. There have been books written about it and documentaries made. I'm not going to say it tries to insult the audience, but it definitely tries to mislead the viewer into thinking it's all hunky-dory with cute anime girls working together and developing friendships. Maybe in smaller teams it would be something more like this, but I don't doubt for a second that it's the outlier here. So if you're going for an accurate look into Japanese game development New Game, turn to the books and documentaries. This anime has no place in representing the industry accurately, even by a little bit. As for the pacing of the series, it's pretty solid for the most part. The first 3 episodes set up what you are to expect for the rest of the series, and from there cruises along at a fine pace. Just like other anime like it, New Game focuses heavily on moments with characters rather than developing a story. Because of this, the show relies on character moments, and until episode 10, they're all very entertaining, and the premise of the series also helps it along. long too. From episode 10 until episode 12, it seems this series just isn't as interesting as it once was. Episode 10 and 11 are easily the weakest and most boring episodes New Game has. This was the point in the show where they kind of started to wrap things up, and because of that, it was just not interesting. Gone was the charm of the show, which was the game development, and at that point, Aoba was well situated in the team too. So what else was there to do? Pretty much nothing. But thankfully though, episode 12 is pretty decent. It's not the strongest writing-wise, but it's still pretty entertaining episode, all things considered.
You know what? On second thought, I don't know if I can do this. Hey, you! Spooked ya.
From a general top-down analysis, the characters in New Game are incredibly simple and somewhat archetypical. Aoba is the new girl who comes to grow into her new position, Ko is the manager, the boss Aoba and the other girls answer to, and etc. In no way should you go in expecting anything with deep characters, as they're just shallow. These characters are pretty cartoonish versions of their likely real-life counterparts. They're always cute, they're always perfect, and the mistakes they make all end up being fine by the end of the series. They're extremely harmless, that's a good way to put it, and that, I believe, is to its detriment. This is because there ends up being no real development. Sure, we get some on-the-surface development, but there is nothing there that makes me go, wow, I experienced a journey with these characters. And to make matters worse, this anime by the end tries to make it seem that way, and while this was happening, I was kind of watching with disbelief. I felt that with the final episode, they wouldn't do what they did here, but New Game does that, and it's very confusing. Honestly, it didn't need that moment of reflection. It needed to really continue what it was doing in those early episodes with these characters.
I apologize. Wait! I'm not a kid, I swear! Actually, I'm going to be working here at Eagle Jump starting today.
As for the art, it's very well done. It's typically what you'd come to expect with this kind of anime, but what makes New Game a little more special is that there is a little more detail put into this anime than you would expect. While the character designs aren't anything special, they are well made, but that's not what I really want to talk about. The backgrounds for New Game is the real star of the show here. Most of what you'll see in New Game is the art team's work cubicles, and they are littered with what makes them, well, them. Ko has a stack of papers with printout of character designs she didn't like. Hajime has several toy swords and other moe memorabilia. Aoba has a character design of her first character she made for the game, but is void of some other things. I can go on. This is easily the best part of the show because of its attention to the finer details. I wouldn't say you should watch it just for this, but it can't be understated how good the art design is. Easily the best part. And then there's the fan service. That's right, there's fan service, and honestly, it didn't need to be there. There are some questionable scenes with a 17-year-old girl. Granted, it only pops up a couple times, but it is there. Basically, the show loves to show Aoba in her underwear, and Hajime also has some really bouncy assets about her, so I guess look out for that if you're looking out for it. I don't know.
All right, kid. Who are you and why are you being so loud?
I am an adult, thank you!
New Game's animation is very well done. The way the characters express their feelings through their body language and face is quite well done. An example of this is episode 1 when Aoba joins the team. She's overwhelmed somewhat and a little overexpressive to show how nervous she is. She twitches and prostrates and her cheeks are a little red from embarrassment. Another example of the great animation is when Hajime is playing with her toy swords. Not only do they animate it well, they animate it exquisitely. For a show that's a slice of life, that little scene with Hajime swinging her toy swords around are pretty awesome. They're fluid, and honestly, I'd love to see this studio one day do something with a little bit more action in mind.
You sure have mature taste if you like yours black.
Well, like I said, I am an adult.
New Game's dub is easily one of the better in its genre that Funimation have produced, beating out many anime in terms of dub quality this year. Plus, I mean, the dub for New Game is just well casted. Just as an example of the cast we're working with, we have Megan Shipman as Aoba, Michelle Rojas as Ko, Caitlin Glass as Umiko, and finally, Tia Ballard as Hajime. Just the people involved, especially Tia Ballard, is a sign of quality with this dub. The acting isn't going to win an Oscar or anything, but it is still phenomenal. Tia Ballard, just on range alone, playing such a different kind of voice than what you'd normally hear from her, is an example of the quality. I won't go as far to say that the dub is better than the Japanese version because I don't typically watch Moe Slice of Life in Japanese. But if you are a fan of English dubs, the New Game's dub will do the job for you. Like I said, it isn't winning an Oscar, but in terms of Funimation dubs, it's surprisingly one of the better in its genre.
Wait, don't tell me. Are you?
I'm not that old. I'm 25. I started working here out of high school just like you.
Let's be honest here. New Game's OST is near non-existent and is really not at all important. I usually go on YouTube and try to find the OSTs for all of the shows I watch, and the only things I could find were insert songs that weren't representative of what the show offered. So I then went back and watched another episode and, well, I kind of was disappointed. The show was so simple that you might as well just forget about it. It was barely even there. I expected a score akin to something like Gamers, which was, I think, a pretty solid score. But New Game, well, there just wasn't anything there. And I'd like to talk more about it, but what is there really to talk about? I could talk about the ending and opening songs, but I found those extremely generic and boring. They're your standard J-pop that does nothing interesting for the show and serves as another way to monetize the show, basically, which is, which I am fine for that, but it just wasn't good. So yeah, if you're looking for a Moe Moe Kyun anime with Moe Moe Kyun music, well, I guess Dragon Maid?
I'm sorry!
Come on, let's go.
New Game is Moe, New Game is Slice of Life. It's honestly a little boring because it's a whole lot about nothing. But this is something I've come to expect from these kinds of slice of anime, and you know what? That's alright. The genre is really about what you find interesting in it. You pick and choose what you want in a slice of life. New Game has its own fair share of problems along with the problems of the genre itself. The show has a weak last 3 episodes, the characters are simple to a fault, and the score for this show is non-existent. But does this mean you shouldn't watch New Game? Well, it depends, really. It does have an interesting premise with game development being the focal point of the plot, and overly animated characters with their own unique personalities. What it comes down to really is, do you like this kind of slice of life? If you know what you like in anime and can answer that question, it may or may not be for you. New Game Season 1 receives a 7 out of 10. So thank you all for watching this review for New Game. Before you go, I ask that you hit the subscribe button, and if you've already hit the subscribe button, please hit the bell icon. It pretty much notifies you when one of my videos goes up. Because recently YouTube have come out and said, hey, the subscribe button doesn't actually work anymore. You gotta hit the bell icon button now to get all of my videos in your sub box. At least that's the best way. If you consistently watch me, you may not need to hit it, but hit it anyways. And hit it on all of your favorite creators too. It really helps everybody out. So